Alright folks, welcome to Premium Fuel Magazine here in Stu's garage, and today we've got something very special that we're putting in the Miata. We've got the infamous, the famous, the much sought after world-class T-5 transmission. This is really something special, folks. I actually have a much earlier video discussing the difference between a world-class T-5 transmission and a standard T-5 transmission. And I highly advise you guys to check that out. You may find it interesting. Spoiler alert, there's actually nothing special about a world-class T5. Mustang guys, don't let somebody scam you into buying a car claiming it's got a world-class T5 transmission in it like it's something special. It's not. The world-class T5 transmissions actually came in just about every Mustang after 1984 and a lot of other cars. There's some other details on it, but that's not what this video is about. Check out the other video to learn about T5 transmissions. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be converting this T5 to a hydraulic style clutch release. So we're going to be retrofitting this Miata slave cylinder onto that guy right there. Alright, now first of all, if you're watching this video, I have to ask you, why is it that you want to convert your T5 transmission from cable to hydraulic? Honestly, in my opinion, I prefer cable. I think cable is better. You may have issues with your cable breaking or whatnot. You want to actually make sure that your cable is installed properly. If you have long tube headers or anything like that, if you're having problems with your cable, you may actually want to take exhaust wrap that's meant for your exhaust and actually wrap the lower portion of your cable and help protect it from the heat. In my opinion, the cable is just better, and I would absolutely not give up my cable transmission for a hydraulic system. I'm not a big fan of the hydraulics, guys. But the Miata that this transmission is going to is not set up for cable, and it will be a whole lot more effort for me to retain the cable setup than to just go ahead and adapt this guy here to this transmission. So this has been done before throughout the Ford community, and I just wanted to go ahead and document it. You can buy kits that will do this very same thing. Those kits are going to run you about $300. What I'm going to show you today is probably going to cost you maybe $70 in parts. That's on the high side, so you're going to be coming out ahead if you do it this way. This is the Miata cylinder, which people use a lot, and it's perfect for me because it's going into a Miata chassis. So unfortunately, this video is only going to be covering the transmission half of the equation. If you've got a car and you really do want to convert the cable or do something else like that, and it's not already set up for a hydraulic slave cylinder, you're going to have to figure out how to get your pedal assembly and everything set up in that chassis. But we're going to cover the transmission side in this video. So basically, we've got to get this guy mounted right here so that that can press on the clutch fork. Alright, so before we get into the cutting and welding portion of our show, I know that there's a couple of setups that you guys are going to want to bring up, and I'm just going to go ahead and address those now. So first off, there's the possibility of installing a hydraulic throwout bearing. I've seen that. It looks very simple, but if you don't get those things exactly perfectly set up in there with the perfect master cylinder and perfect measurements and all of that stuff, those things will just explode on you. So a lot of people have issues with those because they're not set up properly. I don't want to go through that because once you break those, you have to pull the entire transmission out in order to fix it. So the hydraulic throwout bearing is a no-go for this. Also, some of you may be aware that the T-Bird, I think it's the Super Coupe or maybe the old Turbo Coupe, has a T5 with a hydraulic actuated clutch on it as well. I've kind of looked at that. Those parts are rare and hard to come by, and it's just not really practical or easy to try to incorporate that setup onto here. Hence why I'm basically making my own out of stuff that I've put together. So those are the other two options. So what you're seeing here is, in my opinion, the cheapest and easiest way to get this thing done. Just need a little bit of fabrication skills. So as far as materials, what we've got here is we've got a couple of pieces of angle iron. I'm not going to need all of this. Obviously, we've got the Miata slave cylinder. We've got a couple of pieces of hardware because we're going to need to bolt the bracket directly to the bell housing, which I'll show you in just a minute. We also have a few different bolts here. I'm probably not going to use this one because I don't have a nut for that. This is a spare push rod that I have, basically this guy. So we're going to take this out, and that just pops right out. And we're actually going to replace it with this threaded screw. And the reason why we're going to be doing that is because I can cut this to whatever length I need it to be. And then furthermore, since this is threaded all the way down, I can basically adjust this thing to basically engage the clutch fork, which we have now, at any point. So since this isn't installed on the car, I'm basically kind of guessing as to where this is going to sit naturally and how far it's going to travel while I'm fabricating this. And that's going to be a little bit difficult for me to dial in. So in my setup, I'm going to be dialing in a lot of adjustability so I can get this thing right. I've heard of a lot of cases of these things not working out properly. I think that's just a matter of people not setting them up correctly, and they just never had it working correctly. So as long as I can get the spacing and everything figured out, I think I'm going to be good to go on that. I do have this grade A bolt right here, which I'll probably swap in at a later time. But as you can see, it's only got like an inch of itself threaded. This thing's got the whole thing threaded. So I'm going to be able to do a lot more adjustment with this one here. So pretty much that's about it for the overview. And we're going to go ahead and start cutting and welding. So my plan is essentially to take a piece of angle iron like such. We're going to cut this thing down to size, and we're going to mount this right here. And from there, we're going to have to drill a couple of holes in the bell housing right about here. So this will be bolted directly to the bell housing. Most people would just drill holes in this guy and mount the slave cylinder directly to it, but I'm actually going to cut slots instead of holes. That way I'll be able to slide that thing back and forward. That way I don't have to remake the entire thing if I put it in and it's wrong once we got the clutch and everything all installed together. So that's how I'm going to do mine, a little bit different than what you would normally see. From there, we basically just have to get that push rod measured out correctly. And I don't know, I may take this clutch fork out, weld this hole up, and then make my own hole, or I may just try to attach it to the hole the way it is here. I'm not 100% sure yet. Some people will set their slave cylinder all the way out here so that it engages the top of the hole, which is more mechanical advantage, but you need more throw. Some people will put it all the way up close. I'm gonna go all the way up close like this because I don't think it'll matter once I have hydraulics. So let's just go ahead and get started. Alright guys, I'm going to interrupt this awesome montage that we got going on here and show you guys exactly what modifications I'm doing to the slave cylinder in order to get it to work with the setup that we've got going on here. So basically, if you paid attention to the montage, you saw me creating this new push rod. This is the old one. There's no way I can customize this thing or attach nuts to it in order to attach it to the clutch fork, so we can't use this guy. So we put a threaded one in, So as you can see, we rounded out the back side of that, so that fits in there exactly the way it was meant to go. You can see one nut here. There's actually another nut on the other side of this boot here, holding everything together and holding this nut in place. And I actually positioned this nut so that I can't really do this with one hand, guys, but basically when this is fully compressed, the nut basically sits in the position as if it's at rest with your foot off the clutch. So that's sort of how that looks right there. I tried to figure out the position that the clutch fork is going to be in. As you can see, I've got lines here. Down there you can see there's kind of a dark area and a light area. I believe that mark is created by the way that the throwout bearing sits and rotates. So because it's rotating there, it's lighter. Therefore, I believe that the clutch fork should sit right about here when the clutch is not engaged. So that's what I'm basing my mock-up and measurements on. But as you remember, we created these slots so we can move this thing backwards and forwards about 1 inch. And we also have about a 1/2 inch each way here on the shaft here. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish bolting everything up. Oh, and the last part here, as you can see, we've got kind of a large hole here. In order to get this to interface, I actually have this guy here. This is actually part of a sway bar end link off of like a 1979 Buick Riviera that I just had laying around in my garage. You could use a large washer if you want, but I think the shape of this thing actually works really well for what I'm doing. So I can't do all this stuff with one hand, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing together temporarily and show you how it looks. Alright, so here's everything temporarily installed, and I say temporary just because obviously I don't have this thing married up to the engine or the clutch, so I'm not 100% sure where everything is going to fall into line just yet. So I'm pretty sure I have the position correct as far as when the clutch is engaged or when your foot is off the pedal. As far as when you disengage the clutch, as you can see, it's hitting here. I'm not 100% sure how far forward that's going to travel when you go to push the clutch in. As you can see, it's hitting right there. So rather than trying to trim this down to figure out how to make that all fit, I think I'd be better off taking a chunk out of the bell housing here, but I'm just going to wait to do that until I actually see where the end of that travel point is supposed to be. If it stops traveling right here, this will actually be perfect, but I just don't know yet. But it looks like I'm not going to have to weld anything. This was actually a much simpler job than what I thought. All I have to do at this point is physically put it in the car and run all my lines, and it should be good to go. Alright, and one last little modification that I'm making here is I went ahead and threw a little nut and bolt in there in the top hole where the cable actually goes, just basically to keep this from sliding up into the other hole. When you press on it, you don't want it to shoot out into the other hole. So I thought about modifying the fork. I could easily cut that off and close it up, or feel free to do it however you choose to do it. This is just temporary. I don't want to permanently change anything that I can't go back and undo until I know that this whole setup is basically working the way that I want to do it. So I may go back and change it. I may leave it there. Who knows? That's pretty much it for this video, and we'll catch you on the next one, guys.